Okay, I want to finish up part 1 with some more commands that are covered in chapter 4. One of those is circle, which we covered before, but I wanted to talk about it in a little bit more detail. And arc and ellipse, polygon, rectangle, and I believe I mentioned using a solid fill before, and I think I mentioned the donut command, but I'm gonna go ahead and mention that one again too, and revision cloud. So, and also I like to mention the grip every chance I get. But if you select an item, then you'll notice that depending on what your item is, it could have one or more little blue boxes on it. I'll zoom up on this so you can see it. This is a line, and it has a grip at the end and the beginning, and it's got one in the middle. Circle, it's got a grip in the center, and it's got grips at each of the quadrants. So if an entity has a grip, you can left click to turn that red, and you can make a modification on it depending on what the grip is. This grip was on the outside, so it changes the diameter of that circle. If I left click the center, then it allows me to move that circle based on the center point. Click on this line, the end of the line, well, it stretches that line. Click on the middle, it moves it. So when that blue grip is changed to red, it's called a hot grip. I'm going to get rid of those. I've got my drawing with my layers on it. I've got my object layer set as current, and I want to talk about circle. Now, a lot of times if I'm using circle in a unique way, rather than use the shortcut, I prefer to say draw circle, and then I've got a choice of the one that I want to use, particularly if I'm given a diameter and I don't want to have to use the shortcut command and have to type in D for diameter and then put in a diameter. If I know I'm given a diameter, then I can just choose to use the circle center diameter function of that command. But I can also use circle if I've got 2 points, 3 points, and tangent, tangent, radius, and tangent, tangent, tangent. This very last one is not available in the shortcut toolbar, and it's only available using the menu bar here. So I've got a drawing open. So I've got some various objects here, and I want to show you some different ways of using circle depending on what you've got drawn. So I'm going to use draw, circle, 2 points, and I'm going to choose a point here and then a point there, and you can see that that has drawn a circle for me using the 2 points that I specified, and those 2 points are located on the outside of that circle. Draw, circle, 3 points, end, and center. So that's located a circle with that end point, in the middle of that circle, all located around the outside of the circle. Draw, circle. Tangent, tangent, radius is probably one that you'll use a lot. In order to use a tangent snap, I'm going to have to add that to my object snap. Well, I want to undo that. Don't know how I managed to do that, but I did. Right click on my object snap, settings, and you can see tangent is one of the ones that I can choose. I normally don't leave it as a default because it'll give me many suggestions there, but I'm going to set my tangent snap, and now I'm going to use draw, circle, tangent, tangent, radius, and when I get close to that line, I can see a tangent symbol, and then I get close to that one, and then it's asking me for a radius right here, so I'm going to put in a radius of 1, and that has created a circle that is tangent with that line, and tangent with the circle at the same, the smaller circle at the same time. Now you probably noticed when I was using that command, it called it a deferred tangent. Do it again, draw, circle, tangent, tangent, radius. See, it can't draw that circle until I get it some more information. And it can't draw the circle there without additional information. So once I entered that radius, then it put that radius in there and made that circle with the 1 unit radius tangent with that line and tangent with that circle. So if for some reason we wanted to blend this line and that circle, then we could do it with this radius. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use modify, trim, hit enter again, and then I'm just going to trim this up a little bit. And you can see how using a radius between those two entities changes that object a lot. So if for some reason you wanted to combine this line and that circle in a way that, like a smoother transition between the two, then you could. Just going to undo, bring all that back. Here's another one that I'm going to do a tangent, tangent, a radius, draw, circle, tangent, tangent, radius. Zoom up on that a little bit more. I'm going to choose that one and that one, use the same radius, and now I have blended those two. And again, if we wanted to trim some items up and see what that looked like after we trimmed them up, modify, trim, hit enter again. You can see we blended those two and then trim back the circle so that now we've just got a radius. Over here, what if we wanted a circle that tangent all 3 of these? Draw, circle, tan, tan, tan. So now that created a circle that tangents with all 3 of those lines. So depending on what you need to draw, you can use the different functions of the circle command are really handy. Draw arc. Now, arc has a lot of different choices. I'm not going to demonstrate all of these. I doubt that you'll ever use all of them. In fact, I prefer to use circle and then just cut it as needed for an arc. But I'm going to show you how to use the arc and warn you that it works counterclockwise. So I've located 3 points working backwards from the clock and located a partial arc. That was using 3 points. I'm going to choose center, start, end, and of course the command line is giving me a little reminder there, but I'm going to click a start point, a center point, and then it wants me to start. Well, again, I have to think about going counterclockwise, because if I was to start here and go around here, you can see I might end up with an arc that is backwards from what I want. Draw, ellipse, and we can draw an elliptical arc, or we can draw an ellipse starting with the center, or we can draw an ellipse where we give the axis and the end location. Probably most of the time you're going to be working with center. I'm going to start a center here, and then I'm going to locate 1 point on an axis, and then I'm going to locate another point. So that could have been what's called the minor radius of the ellipse, or it could be the major radius, depending on how I squash this. A more practical way of using the ellipse is to actually use it in a situation where this one has, this is an angle type clip, and it's got a hole in it. And this leg of the angle is turned this way, and this lower leg, which you should be able to see right here, has a hole in it. Well, since this hole is at an angle, it's going to show up as an ellipse here. The hole is a 1/2 inch radius, and so I'm going to project some lines down to help me draw that first. Just lining up the edge of that hole. I'm also going to need, I know that that hole is has a 1/2 inch radius, so I'm going to use offset, and I'm going to use an offset of 0.5. What I'm doing, I'm creating a little box for my ellipse to fit in. Draw, ellipse. That's my center. That's one of my axes, and that's the other one. Erase these working lines that I don't need anymore. And then I've got my ellipse drawn in there, and that's what my hole would look like. If I wanted to draw the ellipse in the back, then I could do that too. I'm going to project the center point of that, and then I'm going to use a copy of this, and because I'll be able to see part of that hole from the back, and I'm going to copy that here to here, and then I'm just going to trim up see, I won't see that portion. So if I'm looking at that hole, this is what it'll look like. First I'll see this portion of the hole, the front of the hole, and then I'll see part of the back of the hole. So that's the ellipse command. Draw a polygon. As long as we're talking about polygon, I wanted to go ahead and remind you about inscribe and circumscribe when we were doing like a hexagon and manual drafting. So I did draw a polygon, and it wants to know the number of sides. So I'm going to put 8. Then it wants the center. And then it wants to know if it is inscribed in a circle or circumscribed about a circle. Now, after I decide whether I want it, inside a circle or outside a circle, then it's going to ask me for a dimension. But before I do that, it wants to know which of these I want. So first of all, I'm going to accept the I, or I can type I, enter, and then it wants to know the radius. And I'm going to put 2, like the one that's drawn just above it. And then I'm going to use draw polygon again. And I'm going to use 8 again. It's about beside the center. I'm going to do this one circumscribed. And again, I'm going to use 2. So you can see where they look really different. This one is outside, or this one is inside a 2-inch circle. This one is outside a 2-inch radius circle. Also, you might notice if I touch on that, see how many grips that's got. All of those are associated because I drew that. The draw polygon works to create a single unit. Those are not individual lines. So that's much quicker than if you had to draw each one of those lines. Draw rectangle, and it wants you to specify the first corner, and it has some other things that you can do too. And then it wants the second corner, or you can put in dimensions for it, which is probably going to be the most common way to use it. So now I've got a rectangle drawn, and it's all one entity again, just like the polygon. Draw rectangle. Let's look at some of these options that we have. We've got chamfer, We're not going to work on elevation or thickness or width, but we've got chamfer and fillet, and that would put a chamfer or a fillet on all of the corners as we're drawing the rectangle all at one time. So I'm going to put fillet on here, and I'm going to make the radius 0.5. I bet that's going to be too big. I think I'll use 0.12 and specify a corner. And now I'm going to put in some dimensions. And I'm going to make it about 5 by 4. Then it wants me to flip it around depending on which orientation I want it. So then I just pick a spot on the screen. And now I can see that that has drawn a rectangle that's 5 by 4 with the fillets already in it. And all of it is associated with each other. If I click on it, I get grips, but everything belongs to each other. They're not single lines and arcs. So that's an easy way to use a rectangle that's already filleted. We talked about options from time to time, and I believe I showed you where solid fill is, but I'm going to show you again. It's under Display, Apply Solid Fill. I'm going to leave it on, and I'm going to do Draw, Donut. I'm just going to go with the default dimensions that I have in there, or I could specify something. And I can just keep drawing those little donuts. Or, if we take that off and draw donuts, doesn't change what I've got drawn, but it changes the future ones. So I would probably just leave that at the default, unless for some reason you need to draw something in particular that you don't want to use the solid fill. The last one I want to talk about is a revision cloud. Draw, revision cloud. I usually don't change anything about the default settings, and just it lays down little curly lines, and all I click once and just move my mouse around. When it gets close to the end, it'll end it for me. I don't even have to click. Now, revision cloud is for a drawing that you're making a revision on, and maybe you want to tell somebody, alert somebody the area that's being revised. You might use a cloud like this, and you have a note in here, deleted clips from side. Draw, revision cloud. Left click to start it. Move the mouse, and see, depending on whether I go left or right, that changes a little bit. It gets anywhere close to the end and it stops. So that's it for this section.